In order to test an AngularJS directive, we need to emulate what is going on with that directive in the DOM. Behind the scenes, Angular uses the $compile service to build out these directives into the dynamic elements that we're used to, and we can emulate that in Jasmine. Now, I have here a simple directive that we're going to test. It's called NSStateful. It's a very simple concept where if you click the directive, it's going to add a class to itself, and if you unclick it, it's going to remove the class, and it's going to know whether or not it has that class just using the jQuery handler here. Furthermore, it's going to throw an error if you don't provide it a class name. And right here I've created the stateful spec. Now before we look at that, I want to note that I've added jQuery to the Bower components, and that's in our bower.json. And I've also added to the Karma configuration so that when we run Karma, we have jQuery available to us. When you're doing directive testing, even if you don't use jQuery in your application, having it available for testing purposes is very useful, primarily because it allows you to quickly add and pick up things from the DOM, and that's very useful for testing directives. So we have the directives module, and here you can see we grab a scope, we create a new scope, and we use the compile service to compile out a version of our element, which we then add to the body and digest. And you can see this is a simple HTML, but it's a valid case for this. What it's going to do is it's going to add the class red in a toggle form. Now we want to test really just two main flows with this. One is the positive case, so we're going to say it should be able to toggle the class based on clicks. What we're going to do here is we're going to kind of get a 3 in 1, and we're going to create our expectation for the initial case, which is l.hasClass. The class name is red, so that should be false initially. We should do an l.click, and then if we do a scope.digest, which is needed to kick off the Angular lifecycle, then we should be able to expect the true case, l.hasClass red, to be true. And that's basically how this toggle works. And of course, we're going to flip it off as well. And we're going to be able to expect the false case there. And then finally, to round it off, just to make sure it's actually a real toggle, we'll expect the true case again. Sometimes you want to put these in 3 different tests, but since they have to happen in a row anyway, I figure it can all be in the same it block. The other thing we're going to need is it should throw an error when initialized. Now we'll say compiled with an empty name. So what this means is we're expecting that error to throw if there's no NSStateful provided. So we can just emulate this here with the compile service, take an Angular element, and we'll write out a little HTML block. We'll make it an A tag, NSStateful with no name. We'll close out the tag, compile it in the same scope. Doesn't really matter because we already know it's going to throw an error. And from there, we should be able to run our test and emulate this behavior. So we'll do karma start, karma. We have 17 of 17 success.